Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Powerhouse Podcast. I am super thrilled and excited because the guest I have in store for you is just seriously a powerhouse and one of the women that I admire most in the circles that I run with. And so I am just delighted and thrilled. And let me just say hello to Miss Ellen Rogin, who is here joining us today. Hello, Ellen. Welcome to the show.
Candy, how sweet of you to say that. And I'm so honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, it is actually my honor. And as you will find very quickly, Ellen is a true powerhouse. And I am so excited for her to share her brilliance and insight with all of you. For those of you that might be just tuning in for the first time, this is our space to talk about leadership and what it means to be a leader in today's environment, and knowing that ultimately leadership is a function of how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve, and how you choose to take personal responsibility inside that space. It is everyone's opportunity, and we like to get into those discussions here on the Powerhouse Podcast that are rich and meaty and going to sometimes make you uncomfortable because growth comes in the uncomfort. And so with that, let me tell you a little bit about my amazing guest. Ellen Rogin has made her life's work educating, counseling, and guiding people to grow their prosperity and use it as a force for good in their lives and in the world. She's the co-author of the New York Times Bestseller, Picture Your Prosperity, Smart Money Moves to Turn Your Vision into Reality. Chocked full of left brain credentials, she is an MBA, CPA, certified financial planner. She has lots of letters after her name. She also walks on the right side, balancing values, big picture, ideas, meditation, and a sense of humor. The abundance activist is as comfortable talking about the power of compound interest as she is in the power of belief. Told you she's a powerhouse. Love her. She is a TedX presenter. Her work is quoted in national publications like the New York Times, Money Magazine, Time.com, Forbes.com, and the Huffington Post. She wants to live in and help create a world where everyone is a rock star at handling their money. Everyone's life work is filled with meaning, generosity, and abundance. And kids think their moms are forever cool. I love that. So once again, welcome to the show.
I'm working on that last one.
I think there's a lot of people that have to work on that one. Right? We go through those phases. So Ellen, I've known you for a little while, and I know that when we first started to play, you were still in the space of kind of the financial services industry. Mm-hmm. And you have recently stepped out to really carry your message on a much bigger platform and bigger level. Help the audience understand kind of what your journey's been like and where your heart and focus is now.
Yeah, so started out maybe like many of you that I started in a profession I was good at, but not necessarily loving. So I started in public accounting, knew I didn't love that, went into the financial advisory, financial planning world, and really, loved working with my clients, loved helping them feel better about their money. And part of the way I grew that business was through speaking, and very quickly realized wow, I so love getting a message out there and serving people, and wanted to do that in a bigger way. So really after close to 30 years have moved out of that and moving more into full-time on my speaking and writing. And I'm really driven to do that because I see so much dysfunction that people have around money, whether they have it or not. I worked with people with lots of money, and it didn't mean that they weren't worried about it, or that they didn't fight with their partner about it. And I see that so much more impact to the world and beauty and calm and contribution can happen when people are grounded in how they view their own money and prosperity and contribution to the world.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you say that. First of all, I would love to get into more of the connection between money, prosperity, generosity, how all those things play together. But also even expanding it from there, I don't think people realize the connection into mind, body, health, wealth, how money and their money stories are not just holding them back from receiving abundance, but how they are holding them back from all the aspects of how they could be fulfilled in their life and how they're showing up in their highest and best capacity. I think for a lot of people, they put money in that bucket. That's kind of like money, not realizing that their beliefs around money oftentimes are the core foundation for their programming, their beliefs around everything showing up in their life. So I would love your perspective on sort of how those play hand in hand, money, prosperity, generosity, and how you've seen that programming affect or impact people from being able to really step into that space to live their life more purposely.
So let's start with the beliefs discussion. Years ago, I read The Biology of Belief by Bruce Lipton, which was one of my favorite books. And it just struck me then that, oh my God. So what Bruce Lipton says is that we develop most of our subconscious beliefs between conception and age 7. Mm-hmm. And when I read that, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Well, that includes our money beliefs. And most of the financial services industry focuses only on the tactical parts of money. Like, how are you allocating your 401k plan? How are you saving? Are you budgeting? And very little, if any, attention is put on what do you believe about money. I mean, there's some conversation about how you talk to your parents or your partner about money. But if you make the analogy like money, like food or diet, most of us know we can't say to someone who's overweight, well, just exercise and eat better. Because if it was that simple, then no one would choose probably to be overweight. I mean, maybe some people, I don't know. But there's more involved in that, right?
Right.
And same thing with money issues. Like, just stop worrying about it or just save more. I mean, it's so much more complicated than that. So I don't think that people realize how those early money messages, either that they receive from their parents or that they're giving to their kids, actually makes a big impact about how people relate to money, whether that's their own personal finances or growing your business, or asking for a raise or anything else that goes in that money world is affected by those early messages.
Yeah, and what I'm interested in, absolutely true. And I mean, I know I've had to do a lot of my own money work as I've, stepped out of corporate, which has its whole entity, and I got good at negotiating things there. But moving out and being an entrepreneur, there's a whole different kind of side of money stories that start to show up, because there's almost a comfort zone or a security blanket, even when it feels tough, when you're in that corporate environment that's not available to you as an entrepreneur.
Sure.
But what I'm curious about, when you get in that space, I find, and I would love your take on this, I find that for some people, there's even more fear to step into what that money story really is. Like there's almost a paralyzing fear to even ask that question, as if that almost stems from its own fear in itself. And I don't know if that made sense or not, but do you find that, and do you see that, and do you have perhaps some thought around why that happens and why that seems to be? We have such a fear around money as a culture in general, and the power of money, and like people are afraid to have a conversation about it.
Well, they're afraid to have a conversation. What I'm hearing you say is people are afraid to have a conversation with themselves, but they're clearly afraid to have it with their coworkers or their partner or whatever. Yeah, it has so much meaning. I think it's really interesting if you can just start, and even if it was a journaling exercise or talking to a friend, like, what does money mean to you? I was an economics major in college, and it wasn't behavioral finance or economics. It was just traditional economics, where we learned that money is a medium of exchange and people are rational decision makers. I mean, that is so ridiculous. Like, we're not rational decision makers.
No. No, and we make all our decisions based on emotions.
Oh, yeah, of course. And as you said, and all this other stuff tied up in it that isn't always, that sometimes is less than excellent. Right? Our viewpoints on it. So if you can just start by saying, well, what does money mean to me? Like, what, and just even realizing that it means something. Is it control or love or power or security or status, a million different things, and just start to go, oh, like I hadn't even actually thought about that's the meaning. And then you can possibly say, well, does that serve me? Because just because you believe something doesn't mean it's true.
Right.
Like I'll have people, oh, money is so complicated or so hard. Well, maybe you're thinking that's probably not actually even true. When I started to look at this area of my money personality and finances, I was in my 20s, and I did this deep exploration, like, what does money mean to me? Where were my early money lessons? And I realized, so I had my own firm at like 27. I broke off from another firm and was trying to grow that business. And realized in this exploration that I had this unexamined belief that handling money was my husband's job. Now that was, and further, I probably couldn't even do it. Right. Now, that may have come from the fact that my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad handled all the money, and that's what I saw. They certainly never, ever gave me that message. And the cool thing is once you can take it from wherever it is back here and examine it, I could go, well, that is just a stupid belief that doesn't even make any sense. I mean, at that point, I had all these letters after my name. I had my own business. It was ridiculous. And if I had never looked at it, I don't think I would have had as successful of a business career, because it would have been this tape playing in the background that maybe I wasn't even aware of, like, oh, that's Stephen's job. Oh, that's, I probably can't even do it.
Well, and I think that's so powerful and true, right? Because a lot of people aren't even aware of the stories that they have. And it's not oftentimes what we've been told, it's what we've watched and our interpretation. Because truth is nothing more than your perception or filter you're using at any given time. There is no real truth in a lot of things. It's your perception based on what your beliefs, your experiences, your expertise, your environment, a bazillion other things influence. And so your truth is whatever you chose to interpret with whatever was going on in that dynamic. And so when you don't even know that that's there, I think it's hard sometimes for people to connect to, oh, that doesn't even serve me. That doesn't make sense. That's ludicrous. Because I also wonder, have you found, and I have my kind of perspective or truth on this, but I'm curious again from you, do you see people that often have conflicting beliefs about money, where in one breath they'll be like, money is easy, it flows, it's this, and it's, not accessible, it's not, and it's almost like they have contradictory beliefs that also are holding them back, and they're not even aware of where those contradictions are creating even greater stress or fear or kind of that space to shut them down.
Yeah, of course, because we're not rational. And if you think about, like when you were saying, we have through our experiences and things, and if we believe Bruce Lipton that these subconscious beliefs happen early in life, you could see a little kid interpreting something that isn't even right. It's just, mom doesn't love me because she went out one day and I was home alone. I mean, wasn't her intent, but that was an interpretation. So there's all, and having those conflicting beliefs can certainly hold you back. So this is not a direct money one, but it indirectly impacted money. So when when our kids were little, and I had been maybe in the business 10 years. And as I said, I was really wanting to expand my speaking. And I always had goals around that. Like, oh, I want to get out and speak more and run my business. I want to build this other business and run my business. And when I look back, and all through that first period of time, I was frustrated at the end of the year and felt like a failure on my speaking side, because I didn't really ever grow that. I'm like, why am I setting these goals? It just didn't work. And then looking back 10 years after that, I had conflicting goals. I had little kids. I wanted to be there for them, and being able to speak all over means you're away. So here it was, these goals, which is kind of like you're saying, it just is a different frame around it, that weren't supporting each other. And gratefully, the little kid goal was the one that I had more energy behind. And I was around more for them, still doing things and growing a business. But at the time, it was not clear to me that that was one of the things holding me back.
Well, and it's so interesting that you said it, because I had a very similar one, and my kid is my fur baby. And I got to a point where even a year and a half ago, I found myself back on the road like I was when I was in corporate. And Peyton made it very clear. He kind of jumped out of the car as dog sitter, and then got out and jumped back in and got in the fetal position and wouldn't come out. And I just started crying. And I had to have that moment to say, why? Because I was feeling some blocks and some pushes. And very much that same thing. It was, I chose to change my life when I was ready to adopt a rescue dog, so that I would be present. I was very clear. I didn't want to get a rescue dog just to have somebody else take care of it all the time when I was on the road. And here I was getting myself in that space, that it's been interesting how much I was able to double and triple my business and making a decision that started to be more aligned. Because we don't realize how sometimes that contradictory, because it's not that I can't speak and I can't go out and train. I can do it in a different approach. I can do more online. I can find a way to reach people, and I can do it in pockets instead of 2 to 3 weeks at a time. and make it more meaningful and make sure I'm showing up in places that really light me up. But I think it's interesting that you say that, because I think especially for women, they find that dichotomy of, I really want this, and yet I really want this, and they're in two different spaces. And oftentimes the biggest things that's creating that resistance and that block for them, and is indirectly or directly tied to the money and the abundance that they're bringing.
What I love about that story, and as you were talking, what was coming up for me is giving yourself permission to not beat yourself up, but maybe look at it a different way. So why aren't I reaching this goal? Maybe it's not because I'm not trying hard enough, I'm not making enough sales calls. Maybe there's a conflicting belief, or it's not supposed to happen right now. And to give ourselves the permission to look at it in maybe a little bit more gentle, compassionate way to ourselves. Right.
Well, and that's so interesting. And I like that you're taking that from that, because one of the things, I'll talk to people about, and you'll appreciate this, especially being a fellow numbers person, is, I talk about, we have this way that everybody thinks 1 and 1 is 2. And mathematically 1 + 1 is 2. Yet we forget, so is the square root of 4. So is 296 minus 294. So there's infinite ways to get to 2, because there's also infinite numbers in our number system, right? But we get so caught up in, I've got to be a speaker, and it's got to be the 1 + 1 is 2 equation where I'm on the road, it looks like this, not realizing that our equation might be the square root of 4, or 2 might not even be what we ultimately want. We have convinced ourselves that 2 is what we want, because we're shooting all over ourselves and saying, well, that's what everybody expects as I'm building this kind of business, that I should be out on the speaking circuit 24/7 doing this, and it looks like that, when the outcome might be like 345 or 297. And it gives you a whole different realm to play in, instead of getting so locked in that space to what you're talking about, beating yourself up, right? And I think about how hard we are on ourselves when we don't hit those arbitrary expectations that might not even be ours.
What I love about that is it also, like the 2 could look different, or you could get to 2 differently. And I had an experience during that wanting to build the speaking business time. I had actually hired someone. I like hiring coaches, and sometimes I do it a little too much, but, because they'll fix it. But, that over the years I've learned, the right way to do that. But I had, around that time, I had someone from a bank that was starting in Chicago contact me and saying that they really wanted me to be involved in the bank. Mm-hmm. And initially it was like, I don't want to be involved in a bank. I don't want to, our kids were still little then. I don't want to drive downtown and put on a suit and all of that. And the CEO of the bank is very persistent. Mm-hmm. And kept saying, no, like, what would you want to do? What would you want to do? And we finally came to, well, I was like, I really like marketing. I really like speaking. And he kept 7 times offering me a different position. And the woman who I hired as the coach said, Ellen, and it ultimately was, I was going to be speaking for the bank. She said, Ellen, I don't get it. This is what you said you wanted. But in my mind, like, being involved in a bank was not something I wanted to do. So it looked different. My number 2 was like a Roman numeral 2 instead of a regular 2. Right. And 15 years later, I, thank God, took that position. I've been on the board of the bank. I do consulting with them once a week for the last 15 years, because thank God I was willing to look that the picture looked differently. But if he hadn't been him and was really trying to convince me in a way that I heard, I would have missed that entire opportunity.
Yeah. And so, that's so powerful to think about how many opportunities we miss, right? So many times we stare at the front door and we expect it to come in a gold package with a red bow on a silver platter. And a lot of times it comes in the back door with the newspaper the bird pooped all over, and you got to get layers of the wrinkled, crinkled junk to get into the nugget inside, right? And it was interesting because I use this analogy a lot. I read a quote when I was stepping out from, corporate into the entrepreneurial world, and it said, never ever return a gift to God that's been unopened and unappreciated. And I think about what you just said, how many times we miss those opportunities, those lucrative, prosperous, abundant opportunities, because we're so convinced on how it has to be packaged that we lose sight of the fact that we got exactly what we asked for and more. It's that space of manifestation, right? And I know you do a lot of work in that space around really being able to tap into, that space of how to call to you what you want. You meditate, you do a lot around meditation, and you're doing this work now to really be inspired in a place of generosity. And I'm curious, how does that start to then leverage into the work you're now focused on, as you've shifted out of that, really being more in the financial, services space in terms of how you're helping people access more there? How is that leveraging you into in the next kind of pivot point where you're at right now?
Well, when I think about how I built my business originally, I was very lucky to be connected with a woman at the time whose name is Suzanne Stone, and someone referred me to her to learn how to network. I mean, this is really early in my career, and she gave me the most beautiful advice. And she said, Ellen, what you sow, you reap. And the more you're out there serving other people without an expectation of getting anything back in return in terms of giving business, supporting them, it will flow back to you, and not necessarily from the person you gave to. Right. So if I was out there giving referrals at the time, the logical ones were accountants, CPAs, mortgage brokers, but it could be a therapist, it could be a massage therapist, without the old school way, especially in financial services, of give to get. Okay, Candy, I'll give you a referral, but then you have to give me one. But like, hey, if you do a great job for my client, everybody's happy.
Right.
And what I've realized over all these years is that's just how life works. And the more you're out there sharing information, doing the right thing, and being open to receiving. So it's not, so if we look at it visually, if your hands are in a fist, like think about during the recession, everyone was so scared, holding on so tightly to what you have, and your hands are in a fist because you're scared of not having enough. So I can't give because I would lose. How are you going to receive if your hands are in a fist? Mm-hmm. Now, on the other hand, if you're giving all the time and your hands are open and you're not willing to receive, that doesn't work either. And especially in business, these beliefs around money, like we have to believe we're worth what we're charging. We have to believe that we have to charge or people won't be, not always, right? Sometimes we do pro bono work or we have scholarship funds or whatever. But people value your work more when they're paying for it.
Well, there's skin in the game for them, right?
More skin in the game.
And they're investing in themselves. So there's a worth equation on both sides of that, on both sides of that. Because there's not only you having as the person offering value, knowing the worth in that, it's the person who's saying, I have value in the fact that I'm investing in me to receive that value. And so that law of reciprocity that you're talking about demands that space of being able to give and receive. Yeah,
and I think a lot of people, and especially women, aren't necessarily good receivers. We're really good givers, and we feel good. Yeah.
I'm working on that myself every more, because it has been the epiphany of, wow, you are limited in what you can give when you don't allow others to help without an agenda and receive the gifts that show up as beautifully as they show up. And you're like, oh, okay, yes, thank you. Thank you.
And you're not really serving by not receiving. So there's been all sorts of studies on the benefits of giving. People that are generous live longer, they're happier. Kids that give have lower rates of depression. They're more successful as adults. There's all this research around this. So Candy, if you're trying to help me, and I'm like, no, I got this, which is typically my way because I want to show I'm independent and I've been brought up that way. But I hurt your ability to feel good. Right? So you have to be able to be open to receiving. And the analogy I use a lot is if we think about compliments. Mm-hmm. So if you give me a really authentic compliment, and even if it's a little one, like, hey, love your red leather jacket. And I'm like, this I'm like, this old thing, I found it on the side of the road or whatever, however we dismiss it. Not only am I not taking in the compliment, I just dissed you. Like you were trying to do something nice. And it
goes back to that statement around not receiving a gift of love from God that's been unopened and unappreciated. Because ultimately that's what a compliment is. It's somebody who's in a place of love and they're seeing mirrored back in somebody something that fills them with joy, and they want to honor it and acknowledge it. And it's nothing but an exchange of love. And we're blocking that and just, to your point, dissing that to say, And I mean, both people end up losing in that scenario.
Yeah. And so it's a really easy way to practice, right? To just catch yourself when you're getting a compliment, noticing what the self-talk is like, oh, they tell that to everyone, or I don't, not really, versus just taking it in. And your response is thank you.
Yes.
Not no problem, or, thank you. And not throwing the compliment right back. Like, oh, love your scarf. Like, it's not okay for me to just accept that and have it land.
Well, and it's so interesting because I always ask people, there's 3 questions when I say, if you have to ask yourself if you're playing small, the answer is yes, you're playing small. Because when you're playing full out and you're in that space to be fully generous, wide open, vulnerable, you're leading, you don't have to ask. You're in your sweet spot. You're showing up. So when you ask that, the questions are really around, who are you not serving? Whose permission are you taking away? And who are you not letting shine their light? And I've told this story a couple times. And my best friend doesn't even remember this, but it's exactly what you're talking about. It's one of those moments where I was talking, we were on the phone one night and I just said something about, oh, the business is going great. Things are moving. I said, man, totally different than last Thursday when I wanted to be in the fetal position. And she goes, I don't remember my phone ringing Thursday night. I said, what? She goes, I don't remember my phone ringing. I said, what? I go, you're married. You have 3 kids. One of them was my goddaughter. And her response was such a gut punch that like all 3 of those questions just came and sucker punched me at once. She goes, wow. So when did you get to decide I get to be your best friend?
Oh.
And I was like, it felt awful. And I said, what? And she said, Candy, how do you feel when you're the person people reach out to because they need a shoulder, they need a rock, they need someone to lift them? And I was like, I feel great. And she's like, you don't let anyone do that for you. And she goes, you only let us be your friend when the world is going wrong. She goes, you never let anyone be your friend when it counts. And that was a wake-up call for me because it is exactly what you're talking about. It's that opportunity to receive. I had no idea I was robbing my best friend of the greatest joy she wants to receive, which is to be my best friend.
That's such a
that was just, talk about, that's why she's my best friend, because we call that BS out for each other, right? And it's that space of, wow, how much are you shutting down opportunity for other people because you choose not to say thank you? And just that's all that's required is a thank you.
And sometimes to ask for help and to make the analogy, okay, if we're doing that, we're like showing we're so strong, we're not letting people help us, we're dissing when they're getting compliments. Like, how is that showing up in your business or your professional life? How is that showing up with your money? We get tactical with money and generosity. I have had so much experience with this and see it over and over with other people that when you are generous with your money, it will flow back to you. Not more generous than's responsible, not giving so much away that you're not okay, but when you give, it will flow back to you because you're releasing that grip. You're allowing money to flow. You're also giving a kind of a tactical manifestation of your gratitude. Like, I am grateful for what I have. Maybe I could use more or I'm looking to grow more, but I know I'm better off than 90% of the world, 95% of the world. And if I can help a little bit with someone, a charity or someone in my life or whatever is meaningful to you, and you loosen that grip, it will flow back. It just will.
I like that phrase, practical manifestation of gratitude. I think people forget that gratitude is an actual muscle you need to flex. And to have a practical manifestation or a practical practice that says, I am deliberately putting myself in a place of gratitude. And it is that being able to be generous without expecting anything back, because just simply as a universal law of reciprocity demands that what you put out has to flow. And I always thought it was interesting being an engineer. I said, I remember nothing from engineering except the second law of thermodynamics, because it's the law of attraction. What goes out must come back. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. It's got a yin yang kind of a space. It just is, whether we believe it or not. It's like gravity. You don't have to believe gravity to know it exists. Gravity doesn't care whether you believe that gravity exists. Gravity is, it is what it is. And so when you understand that, and to your point, you create those opportunities for release and then to receive, it has to naturally flow. And I think one of my favorite quotes of all times is Bruce Lee, who said, be like water, my friend. Because you can't, if you hold on to water and keep it still, what happens to water when it doesn't move? it gets really stale and stagnant and, it gets toxic, water has to flow. So does money and any other form of energy in our life, which is all money is energy, right?
In circling back to how we started the conversation with people have so much fear around money, the other wonderful thing about gratitude and generosity is that it's an amazing stress reducer. Mm-hmm. So over and over, there's studies about how when you are grateful, it reduces your stress. And it happens with money. I mean, I think back to the recession that seems like a little teeny recession that happened in 2000, 2001. I had a client I was working with who was freaked out because there really hadn't been, as long as I had been in business, anything like that. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so worried. I'm so worried. And from my viewpoint, this is a woman who had 2 homes. And I'm like, in my mind, I didn't say it to her like this because it would not have been supportive. I'm like, you are so far from not okay.
Right.
Like so far from not okay. And when you can focus on, okay, there's a roof over my head, or it's sunny out today, or I'm breathing, or whatever it is, it reduces your stress level. And that is practically so important when it comes to money. Studies on this have shown that when people are really, really freaked out, which sometimes, happens, there's things that happen in your life that are really scary around money. When there is that kind of financial pressure, and if it's not released, your IQ actually drops. So your ability to make a good financial decision is totally compromised.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we need self-care. We need contemplative practices to lower that stress level, to be smart and wise about money decisions that we make.
Well, and there's another stat that I've actually used that says gratitude increases happiness by 25% or more. Who doesn't want a little more happiness in their life? So to your point, even if it's like, okay, well, I don't want to focus on the stress side of things, focus on bringing more joy into your life. Gratitude fills that cup. You get to decide, what do you want to focus on, right? And so it's interesting to me how that the story you use of a client who putting things in perspective. I've had clients that have done the same thing. I'm like, you have a $500,000 house. Help me understand how you think your world is collapsing and there's nothing available for you. You have a $500,000 house that's paid off, and you've never not once supported your family in the 57 years that you've been alive.
Right.
Why would you start now? And it's crazy the kind of story and energy we put into things that oftentimes aren't even real, and we've got to make up the whole BS story to go with it just to keep playing in that space.
Yeah, and you're inspiring people to play big in the world. How big are you going to play if you're stuck in that story?
Right. So what's next for you? What's on the horizon that's the big story that's challenging you to step forward? What's the next level for Ellen Rogin? I'm curious.
Oh, a couple things. One, I'm really out there talking about generosity as the new currency in business. I would love to do my part in having people reframe things and realize that when they're out there serving and being generous in whatever that looks like, that everything's better for everyone, for yourself and for your family and your community. On a personal side, I'm embarking starting next week on a mindful leader teacher training process for the next 9 months. So I have always talked about kind of mindfulness and meditation as part of my look at how money works in the world. So I'm going to go deeper into that. I'm super excited. I'm doing it with the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, which was a spinoff of Google. And so I'm super excited.
That's exciting. I'm excited for you and can't wait to hear where that lands you through that process. Because I know when we take that time, and that's another belief, when you invest in yourself, there has to be a return that comes back from that, right? And the more you choose to invest in yourself and your own growth, where you come out on the other side is always this magical, amazing, unbelievable. It's several levels than where you even think it is going into the process, right?
And I actually think it's one of the most important things for people in business to do. And I hadn't really made that distinction. I've always done it. I've invested lots of money and lots of time in my own personal growth. And in my mind, I would always say, okay, how many clients do I need? How many speaking gigs do I need to recoup that? But the more I think about it, Candy, I just know that is crucial to be successful in business, more than all that other stuff we do, which is helpful. Learning how to do social media and learning how to brand and all that other stuff.
Well, and I agree. And for me, I've noticed that some of the reciprocity that comes back is the more I'm investing in me, the more I'm attracting people who are actually challenging me to continue to level up, because they just bringing it. They just keep putting me in a space to say, oh, excuse me. Okay, got it. You know, you throw something out there and they just take it on and digest it and dig in. I'm dying here.
No, you're not. Cancel clear.
Cancel clear. Yes, I love cancel clear. And this is one of the reasons I love you so much, because that's a practice I use as well. Cancel clear. Yes, definitely. And now my voice is back. But it's that space of you attract that, right? So when you're investing heavily in yourself, you attract people that are hungry for that. And so as soon as you throw something out, and right now I'm in a place where almost as quickly as I consume it, I've got people around me that are like, what's next? What's next? And so that I can just introduce it. And it's creating that space of, you know, pure joy to say, oh, I get to continue to invest in myself, because people keep wanting more of that and are hungry for that, keep showing up. But I agree with you. I think single-handedly, that is the biggest thing every entrepreneur needs to, and emerging leader, truthfully. I mean, the C-suite's kind of got one foot in, one foot out, in my opinion. Those up-and-coming, you know, mid to upper-level leaders in corporate, entrepreneurs that are out there building something bigger, biggest thing you can do is make sure you're investing in yourself, time, money, resources, people, all of it, and that's a priority for you as one of your big buckets. Absolutely, if you want to play it.
Yeah, and I want to be clear that investing in yourself, you know, I think someone might go to professional development, like, oh, I'm getting my MBA, and all that's great. What you and I are talking about is self-exploration. What are my beliefs? How am I being mindful? How am I communicating with people? What's my part in this? That's what I know you and I are talking about.
Absolutely. And I call that space even that selfful space, right? I'm like, it's not selfish. You need to find everything. And it includes playtime. It includes quiet time. It includes time to just daydream and be still and allow life to, it's creating space for yourself. That is as much of an investment in you as, and I agree, it's that whole, it's everything that makes you more whole as a human being to step in that space. And so I love that, you know, that you honor that for yourself and model that for so many people.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
So how can people listening stay connected to you? How can they learn more about the work you're doing in generosity? How can they learn more about, you know, maybe investing in themselves on a much deeper level, what that might look like? What's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so there's lots of information at ellenrogin.com. That's ELLENROGIN. And if you go to ellenrogin.com/goodies, there's a bunch of free downloads for you that can help explore this conversation of money and beliefs. And there's all sorts of information on my website, and connect wherever you want, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. Love to connect with any of you. And hopefully there's information there that might have you look at your money and your business and your prosperity in a different light that will be supportive for you.
Well, I will tell you, as someone who has seen and checked out a lot of Ellen's tools, and I'm on her list, I get her newsletters all the time and everything. She has some powerful tools out there. I highly encourage and invite you to check out everything that she has. She has so many good nuggets and information and ways to really help you move forward. We will have all of that information in the show notes, but please go out and check out. She really is gifting you with some amazing, powerful ways to elevate your own game, elevate your life. And so I just truly hope that you'll go and take that opportunity, because it is a gift. And so thank you for offering that to people, and thank you for being on the show. It's such an honor to have you here.
Well, it's so my pleasure, Candy. Thank you.
So as we're closing things out for today's session, is there any last words, any kind of ahas, nuggets, or insights you'd love to leave the audience with before we close?
Yeah, I would leave you with the thought that generosity is the precursor to prosperity, not that happens after you're prosperous.
I love that. I love that. And you know that I love, and it plays so well in a quote that I love to say often, do for one that which you could do for many. So it's not a wait and see game. It's step into a practice of generosity now. I love that. So generosity comes before prosperity. And so it always starts as we've always talked about, it starts with saying yes to yourself and destroying the noise so that you truly can be an effective, powerful, passionate, and purposeful leader, because leadership is ultimately a choice. It's a function of how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you choose to take personal responsibility inside of that space. And choosing to be generous is one of those choices inside of that space. And so again, Ellen, thank you so much for being on the show. You are just one of the most amazing women I know, and so honored to have you in my life and call you my friend.
Oh, thank you, Candy, and thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Hope you'll come back. And for all of you listening, as always, thank you for tuning into the Powerhouse Podcast. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so, because we just have so many more powerful thought leaders who are here to share their insight, their message, and their gifts with you. With that, go out, make your mark, make it a phenomenal day, and always remember to say yes to yourself. I will catch up with you on the next episode. Until then, sending you all heart to heart.